Okay, the author says here risky business. That's what's meant by what came in the hadith. نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيع الغرر. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade the dangerous sale. If you wanted to translate that more literally, bay' al-gharar, or the deceptive sale. So we have it translated here as risky business. To be valid, a deal cannot be risky, except whatever risks the religion permitted, like the risks of hiring and of offering a reward and of tending certain types of trees in exchange for some of the yield. For there is a need for those types of things. The risk is for one or both sides to be unable to estimate the outcome, or for the most likely outcome to be detrimental. So, whenever you have a deal in which one or both sides don't know the outcome of the deal, then that's haram. That's a risky deal. But it is permissible to do some risky deals. There are some risky deals, so fundamentally risky deals are forbidden. If there were a risky deal that's permitted, it's only going to be permitted because the religion allowed us. So when you learn what's risky, and it takes firstly learning, of course, and getting some examples, then after that you'll start to, the more you mess with deals, hear cases, then you'll start to identify the risky aspect of a deal, and then you might know the answer to a question for someone based on a rule. So a risky deal is a deal in which one or both sides don't know the outcome. So it's an example of a deal that's not risky. For example, you have an item on display on your counter in front of you. I see that item in front of you on display and its price. I pull out my money and I say to you verbally, I buy this from you for such and such amount. And you say, I accept to sell it to you for that amount. And then you take my money. If any change is needed, you give me my change back. And I take that item, and then we go our separate ways. Yani, I leave your store, for example. That's not a risky deal. That one there is fair and square. But a risky deal would be like, you get into a cab, and you say to him, take me to such and such location. Take me to these coordinates. This street on this street. Such and such and such street. He says, okay. And then he takes you there. What's the problem here? Do you know what's the problem here? Yeah, you don't know how much it's going to cost you. How he gets there, that doesn't really matter. But the way they do their business, that's going to matter. And they're going to leave the price ambiguous. That's invalid. That's a risky deal there. That's a side, or that's a case in which one side, at least one side, does not know the outcome of the deal. And what shows you, makes it even more clear that this type of deal, in this scenario that I just gave you about getting in the taxi cab, what makes it clearer that this is an invalid deal is if you were to just switch the roles. Imagine if someone got in the vehicle and he said, I want you to take me to a place. So he says, okay, where's that place? So you say to him, start driving. I'll tell you how to get there street by street. So does he know where he's going at the end? He doesn't know. Yeah, does he accept that? He will never accept that. Right? So if it were valid, for him to take you somewhere without telling you how much it's going to cost to get there. It would be valid for you to make him take you somewhere without telling him where you're going to go. So the valid way then is to tell him where you want to go and for him to tell you his price, and then that's it. Now it's fair and square. Now it doesn't matter which way he goes, doesn't matter if there's a traffic jam, etc. That's clear? So we said here, to be valid, the deal cannot be risky, except what risks the religion permitted, like the risks of hiring. So what's the risk in hiring? The risk in hiring is that, for example, let's say you hired a guy to do some job for you and you paid him. So what if he burns you? It still is valid for you to engage in this type of a deal, though. It's not haram for you to engage in that and to agree to that and to pay him up front. None of that's haram. It's haram for him to burn you, though. So this risk is permissible for you to take it. And the risk of offering a reward. Offering a reward is like if you said, whoever finds my cat gets $1,000. Why is this risky? It's risky because you don't even know who's going to do the job. That in itself is a risk. It's like you did a deal with an unknown person. But it is permissible to engage in this type of deal, despite the risk. And tending certain types of trees in exchange for some of the yield. So tending trees in general, without details, tending trees for a yield of the crop is invalid because it's risky. Not only that, even being paid a percentage is risky. Being paid a percentage, agreeing to be paid a percentage, as opposed to being paid a definitive monetary amount. Agreeing to be paid a percentage, that's risky. Because you never know. Your percentage depends on how much you get, how much you bring about. And then you got to divide it so you can get your percentage. So if you had a good day, then based on your percentage, you might get a big profit. And on a bad day with the same percentage, you might get a horrible, no profit. Unless the religion made it permissible. So what we're talking about right now, this case of tending to trees for a yield, for a percentage of the yield, that's not permissible, except what the religion permitted, which I'm going to tell you, inshallah. But that's a very specific case. The case of tending to trees for a percentage of the yield, that's a specific case. I wanted to defocus for you and just bring to your attention that being paid a percentage in general is risky. So there is a way to get paid a percentage, but then there's other ways where you cannot agree to be paid a percentage. So here, what we're talking about, tending certain types of trees in exchange for some of the yield. It's not that tending trees is an invalid work. That's a valid work by itself. If your job is to go in there and, clip and garden and whatever else that involves, that's fine, valid, lawful work in itself. But agreeing that your payment's going to be a percentage of the yield, that's not valid because you don't know how much you're going to get paid. Except in what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam permitted, which is the case of tending to palm trees and grapevines in particular. Palm trees and grapevines in particular. Just those. In other words, it is valid to agree to tend to palm trees and grapevines for a percentage of the yield. But the exact same work that you would do for apple trees or any other trees is not valid, even if it's the exact same, 100% exact same job description. But just because it's not the same trees, it's not valid. Why, though? What makes the difference? The difference that all of it is fundamentally invalid. You got the permission to do something that would have been invalid. It's not that they're valid and then the religion restricted you. It's that it was all invalid actually, but the religion permitted you with something only. Yes, exactly. They can pay the person a known amount of gold or a known amount of silver or a known amount of money or a known amount of grains. As long as it's not a percentage. You could say, you do this work and in exchange for your work, I'll pay you 5 barrels of grain, let's say. That's a valid salary. And he might say, I'll pay you 5 barrels of grain at the end of the season. That's valid. It's a valid salary. It's valid to delay the payment. And then he might even do his harvest and pay him from the yield. Doesn't matter. He didn't say whether his payment's coming from the yield or not. As long as he pays him what he agreed to pay him. For fulfilling that need, just to fill that gap there. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam permitted those for fulfilling the need of that. Then, as we're going to see, there's also like a sub-provision that you can add to this deal. If you have other plants in the midst of those dates or grapevines, then there is a way to include other plants inside of that deal, not independently though. We'll come to that when we get to it, inshallah. So there's a need for these things. All these cases that's permissible risk, it's because the religion recognized the need for them and then permitted us. And so we're going to see many cases here. So insurance then is extremely risky. Because what's going to happen with insurance? You're going to wind up paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars with no return. Your only return was having in your mind that if I do get into an accident, it'll get paid for. But if you don't get into an accident, then you have thrown your money away. Perhaps the very money that you had been paying, had you been able to save it, you would have been able to cover your accident. And some other deals like that. So whenever you want to do a deal, you need to think about the return. Think that deal all the way through. Or also you need to think about the agreement. What exactly are you getting paid? What exactly is the job description? And what exactly are you getting paid? For this reason, what we're talking about now, this is why you can't be hired indefinitely. This is what I'm talking about when I say, take these examples and then understand what does it mean to be risky. And then you'll be presented with cases. And then based on the rules, you'll know if it's valid or invalid a lot of times. So what's another example? We said hiring is valid despite the risk, but not to hire indefinitely, that's invalid. Because now, once you got hired indefinitely, it means you don't know how much you're going to get paid. But it's easier for us in the non-Muslim country dealing with non-Muslims according to the Hanafi school. According to the Hanafis, you can deal with the kafir the way he deals. And according to the Hanafis, you can take the non-Muslim's money with his acceptance. So that's easier than Shafi'i school. When you're dealing with Muslims, though, you can't do that in Hanafi school. Even in the non-Muslim country, but you're dealing with Muslims, then you can't do that in the Hanafi school. Rather, a correct hiring determines the exact task that is to be fulfilled. or the exact time that is to be fulfilled. When we say fulfilled, it means it's over at that time. No more, not repetitive. Yeah, even if it is repetitive, but not repetitive indefinitely. Repetitive to a point that you're able to calculate exactly what you're supposed to get paid in the end. And you're able to calculate exactly the time that you're supposed to work or exactly the task that you have to complete. So, in other words, religiously, rentals and hirings have to be finite, cannot be indefinite. But we'll come back to the chapter of rentals, insha'Allah ta'ala. Now we just want to investigate the meaning of being risky. So the risk is for one or both sides to be unable to estimate the outcome, or for the most likely outcome to be detrimental, such as selling or renting a specific unseen item. A specific unseen item. That means, specific means you said my such and such. So it's that one in particular. Or specific means you said the such and such. So it means that one in particular. Not a such and such. That's not specific. If you go to a store and say, I'd like to buy a such and such, then you're not asking for a specific one. Then you're asking for any one that fits the description. But when you say, I want to buy the such and such, or I want to buy your such and such, then you're asking for a particular one, not any one. So when you buy a specific item, it has to be seen from both parties. Both parties have to see this specific item. So renting or selling a specific unseen item is risky. Renting is going to be like what? Like you rented a house that you never saw the house. When we say you rented it but you never saw it, means you just did the deal with the landlord. You did the deal with him, you never saw the place at all until the day you want to go there. After you did the deal, though. That's not valid. Because you cannot rent a specific thing without seeing it. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's coming it's coming right now, inshallah, in the list here. So selling or renting a specific unseen item, or agreeing to tend to specific unseen trees. Like, I now sell you my horse in the stable, but you never saw that horse. But if you saw it, if you saw the thing, both of you, the seller and the buyer, because even you as the seller, you have to see, you have to have seen what you're selling. You can't sell something of yours, even though you own it, but you haven't seen it. Even despite owning it. Owning it is not enough. You have to see it. Either you or your authorized person who acts on your behalf. If your authorized person sees it and sells it on your behalf, that's valid, even if you never saw it. So you own it, and you say, hey, be an authorized person for me. Go get this package for me and sell it. So now you can go pick up your package, look at it before he sells it, make sure it's good, so it's received. It's like you received it because he did it for you. It's like you looked at it because he did it for you. And then he can sell it. So selling seen items, that's a type of sale in itself. Selling seen items. Put that in its own category. Selling a seen item. So then that means what? There's another way to sell, another category. Selling an unseen item. Is it possible? It is possible to sell an unseen item. It is possible. So then what are we saying here? What is it that's not permissible that we started with? What's not permissible is that you didn't see it and it's a specific item. selling a specific unseen item. So then if you sold something you didn't see, how could that be valid? The way for that to be valid is for it to not be a specific item. But it does have to be very well described, exactly described. Has to be exactly described. Yeah, yes, but not to be specific. But it does have to be described exactly. So not being specific is like saying, I want to buy from you a barrel of wheat. So that means any barrel of wheat. Or I want to buy from you 10 kilos of gold. Not that 10 kilos or your 10 kilos, just 10 kilos. So that means any 10 kilos of 24 karat gold, because you have to describe it exactly. 20 kilos of 24 karat gold, or 20 kilos of 16 karat gold, 18 karat gold. Now he can bring you any 20 kilos. He can agree to that without having seen the exact one he's going to give you yet. He can. It's permissible to agree to that. And you're going to have to pay up front for this type. Anytime you do a sale in which one side has to deliver, you must pay up front. Take that as a rule. If you're getting a delivery, you have to pay up front. Don't agree to a delivery without paying up front. Because, or else, it's going to be a debt for a debt. Agreeing to a delivery without paying up front, that's just selling a debt for a debt. Debt means he owes you. So you owe him and he owes you. He's bringing you a debt. He's going to deliver, so that means he owes you, and you're going to pay later, so that means you owe him. That's not valid. Selling seen items is a type of sale in itself because there is a way to sell without seeing. The specific item must have been seen when the contract was made or before that. The specific item must have been seen when the contract was made or before that, but not by a time long enough for it to change. If you saw it before the contract, then you need to have seen it in a way that it didn't change at the time, by the time of the contract. So if it were, let's say, a heap of gold, you already saw it. It's going to be the same heap of gold. So then you could come 10 days later, 1 year later, and say, I buy your heap of gold from you that I saw a year ago. That's valid. But if it were a cat or a horse, you can't come a year later. Say, I buy your horse that I saw last year, because it's going to have changed by then. And that's the same when it comes to renting. This is the same rule for hiring, for selling and renting. Renting and hiring are the same. If I say rent, that means hire also. If I say hire, that means rent also. No difference at all. For a book, one should see each page. According to this saying, if you buy a book, you need to flip through all the pages. You don't have to stop and look at every page in detail. Like, just take the book if you want to buy a book and just flip it in such a way that your eye hits every page. For a house, all rooms need to be seen, and the roof. That's an important one. Probably a lot of people are missing that one. They want to buy a house, they don't take a look at the roof. So whoever's selling that to you, then let them show you the roof. For a garden, one has to see all the trees. And if this garden is irrigated, he has to see the irrigation path, etc., like that. So that's how you see something. When you buy it, if it's a specific thing, you look at it and you see it. You see all of it, or what needs to be seen of it. If seeing some of the merchandise tells you about the rest of it, then it's enough to see what appears. Like if you're buying a barrel of rice or wheat. So if you open it up from the top, you just see whatever's there on the top. So you don't have to put your hand through and look at every single thing there. When seeing some of it is enough to tell you about the rest of it, then it's enough to see some of it. We're assuming here that the person's not cheating you. It's not like, for example, the rice got wet and then he put the wet rice down towards the bottom so he could get rid of it, and he put the dry rice on top to fool you. We'll come to talk about defective items. Now, we're not talking about some case like that. And when it comes to buying a share, you have to see what's being sold before you buy a share. So when it comes to some businesses, or dealing with corporations and things like that, there's a lot of ambiguity that the people don't recognize as ambiguous. There are many ambiguities that the people don't recognize their ambiguity. For example, the word company, that's ambiguous. So a lot of people get involved in these things and they don't know. So, for example, when I say company is ambiguous, so you say, for example, I have my own company. I own my own company. Okay, what does that even mean? You own your own company. Because what is it that you exactly own? You own your workers? No. Do you own the building? Let's say no. So what do you own then? Maybe you own your merchandise. Okay, so is that a company? Somebody could argue that it's not a company. So you're saying I own my own company, but what does that mean? Sometimes people say, I'm self-employed. How could you be self-employed? That would imply that you pay yourself. And if you pay yourself, you don't need to work. So where's the employment? Somebody else has to employ you and then pay you. You're not employed until somebody agrees to do business with you and agrees to a salary. If you have a vehicle and you have whatever you have, if you're not doing any business, then it's like you're not employed. So buying a share, what does that mean? Well, what it should mean is you want a share of ownership, right? Yeah, I mean, you want to be part owner. That's what it should mean. You want to be part owner. Okay. If you are part owner, the owner of what? So this is where if you investigate these things, you're going to find people not knowing what's happening. But they're putting their money into it. And the way I'm talking to you right now, there's people who understand like what I'm telling you. Yeah, they understand. And they know that the people at large don't understand. So that's how they take advantage of a lot of people and they get a lot of money. And they do all sorts of business deals invalidly. People who work in banks and people who work in stock exchange and people who work in these types of things. They make a lot of money off of nothing, actually. Bitcoin. I knew Bitcoin was a scam since it first popped up. Even there was brothers and sisters defending it. Oh no, it's no, it's a scam. Now it comes out very easily. Now it's a joke. Bitcoin's a joke now. Big scam. How could someone, though, here's the question. How could someone think of that? It's because they know that there's this thing when it comes to business that people have come to accept, that you can pay money and not get anything but think that you did get something. You think you own something. You put money into something and think that you own something when you didn't. Just for the fact that that exists, that's how somebody was able to make up Bitcoin. Say, hey, I got an idea. Here's something we can get people to pay for and think they own. So you want to buy a share of something in the first place, you need to know what you're buying. You need to know what's being sold. You need to see the inventory. You don't just say, oh, I want to be a partner in Disney and just put money in there into the stock market. Then that's it. Or I don't know how to say that there. No, you need to actually go and see what's being sold. What are you selling? Let me see all of it, because you're going to be a partner in it. So you got to see what's there so you can be a partner in that. And then those people, without going too much further here, but then Allah knows, like, it's like their stuff is infinite. So how many shares you have? One might say, I have 5,000 shares. How many shares do you have? I has $2 billion worth of shares. How many shares are there? As many as you want. Just go ahead and throw some more money at us. We'll give you a share too. MashaAllah. Let's stop there, inshallah ta'ala.